Okay, well, how long after the elevators got signed to international artists did Golden Dawn get signed?
A few months. A few months. We were hot to do it. Tommy, as soon as they got signed, he started talking to me about it, and because Tommy was real smart. I mean, Tommy, for all of his, he had, he really had some things about him that just used to piss me off, and I just never agreed with, and I didn't like. But he was older than most of us. He was smart. Business-wise, he had a good side and a bad side. With international artists, he really did believe, and made me believe, and made others believe, a beautiful dream that probably never could have come true. And it obviously didn't come true, but whether it actually could have, who can say about things like that, But his vision really was that Houston was going to be the next music center, not Austin, but that Houston would be it. They had the financial clout, they had the worldwide reputation. L.A. never really did have the music scene. They had the Beach Boys, and they had some of the basically candy-ass American shit going on there. But the only thing that was happening was Dylan and what was coming from England. And some of the guys that were the American band, the Buffalo Springfield, some of those guys that come from usually had come from other places and joined up in California. It wasn't really happening there on the level. You expect to see the monkeys out of them, Just all that stuff just wasn't really what was happening. What we really wanted to happen was the international artist thing, that Tommy, the elevators were we sat around nights and nights and planned this. It wasn't just, it was like they were going to be the spearhead band because they were the more advanced band. They were the best. When they were playing right, they were the best I'd ever heard. To this day, I don't know if I know that I have never experienced a concert as intense as a 13th World Elevator concert when they were on. It just couldn't get any more intense than that. It really did get everybody high. They really did. And even if they weren't stoned, they got stoned. But that was the plan, was to have that happen. We were the second band. We were like their protege band. So in that sense, it was all true. But it was our own talent. But yeah, they were bringing us along. We were onto their trip. We're doing it our own way. But yeah, we were onto it. Proudly so. And then there were some other bands, the Lost and Found in Houston, 2 or 3 other bands. The Conqueror came a little bit later. They were more Austin bands. The Conqueror and Chivas Headband were kind of the Austin power bands. But the Bubble Puppy and the Red Crayon and those bands, they weren't really on the same trip, although Mayo was a pretty apparently far out and advanced guy in his own thinking. So can't put him down. He was trying with every trick he could. It just wasn't the same genre. There wasn't much music involved, but a lot of other pretty creative stuff. But anyway, I don't want to get into him. I don't really know him that well. But the genre, it was supposed to be the center, the new center for the American offering to this whole world of music that was happening. And they had everybody lined up to do it. I mean, it really was going to be like the old Motown thing, where we had the sound, and international artists had everybody lined up. They could have done it. But then there was only one problem. They got everybody signed, they got everything ready, then they looked around in the room and went, now, who knows how to do this? And nobody stepped up to the plate. Nobody had a clue as to how to produce a band or how to get anybody booked or to create any kind of splash or do anything. They didn't have any promotional money. They had zero. All they did was have some really good tapes, because Frank Davis in the Arlen, what studios was it down there? I'm always trying to think of that, and I always want to say Arlen Studios, but I think that's the Austin one that's here. Yeah. Frank Davis was the engineer, and I've got that picture of us all in front of the studios there in Houston that Lanisha has. But I can't think of the name of the studio. Somebody will know it. But the Elevators did their thing there, and we did our thing there. But it was.
So what was a session like at International Artists?
We'd go down to the Western Skies Hotel. They'd put us up for a few days. We realized later, of course, we were paying for all of it, but we thought they were paying for it at the time. And with our material and go in the studio, had really pretty, for the times, it was a good studio. They had Frank Davis really was like just a genius in the studio. He was a great engineer. He was a great guy to work with. He helped us tons because it was our first record, and he had a lot of experience. He helped us, with a lot of stuff. And he had done the same with the Elevators. He was just real good. And it was just, go out in the back, just a studio session, to go out in the backyard and smoke pot or, maybe, sneak some pot. But it was dangerous back then. You're talking about dangerous, how it was a completely different thing. In Austin, it got to the point where you wouldn't have your stash in your house. You would never. Nobody would have their stash in their house that was at all smart. You'd have a stash out in the hills, and you'd drive out to it, and go dig it up, sneak out of the car, go out in the woods, dig it up, get your joint, either smoke it there or drive around with just that one joint in the car so that you could eat it if you had to. And that was our getting stoned. It wasn't like sitting around smoking pot in your house and stuff. No way. Nobody did it. Scared to death.
Did Frank have a lot of input as far as using the studio, putting in the backwards effects, the chimes, and all this?
He really didn't have much with the backwards effects. That was mostly all Tommy.
Really? Tom Ramsey.
But he knew how to do it. He figured it out really quick. Tommy just kind of told him what he was trying to do, and Frank was the guy that figured it out really quick how to do it. And then once he took it, he took the bull by the horns, and was great. And he had ideas. I can't really specifically remember what they were, but he was he was older than us, more experienced. He was kind of definitely our sound guru. We listened to everything he said, He commanded a lot of respect in the studio, deservedly. He'd done the Elevators album,
There you go.
But the old thing is that they'd done the stuff they had done with them so far. They had only done a couple of songs, and a couple of them were on the first Elevator album. Everywhere had not been done yet, and you probably, if you want to talk about how the session was like with International Artists, the next thing, the next subject, immediately goes into we got the album done and mastered and ready to go, and we were all primed and put this whole year's effort into this album and ready to go and have some gigs and be popular. People would finally see how good we were. And the International Artists said, okay, well, that's put on the shelf for a year because we're going to work on Easter Everywhere, and theirs is going to be produced first. So all that did was feed the whole misconception that we had copied the Elevators, because then the record that we did that was supposed to show everybody that we really had a lot of innovative stuff of our own, and we were kind of on the cutting edge too. And in the meantime, the Elevators came out, Revolver came out, which had a backwards lead on it, which we had done before they did. So it would have just had this huge different impact on the market had they just gone ahead and produced our album when it got ready to do. And they didn't, and it didn't, and the rest is hysterical.
How long did you get in the studio to record the album? Was it a quick job? Or
No, we spent a lot of time. We spent a lot of time. There wasn't a hurry-up job. They didn't really hurry us through stuff. We did some of it, live, first couple of takes. Some of it, just some pretty many overdubs, and nothing of it was really too outstanding. It was all just the way, I guess, any session with that technology was done. You had it set up with the sound room for the drums, and everybody was in different rooms and all that. And
so were they using like a 4-track recorder with that, or a 3-track, or do you know? Or
I think I know they had at least a 4-track, and I think maybe they had like a 16-track. I think.
Was International Artists just blatant with you? Did they just say to you, we're going to shelve your album until the elevators come out?
Oh, no, they kept telling us it was almost ready, and it was almost ready. And Frank would be telling us it's ready, you know. And they wouldn't let us play.
They wouldn't let you play gigs?
No, we had a booking contract with them. They wouldn't book us, and they wouldn't let us book gigs. So we were just completely on the shelf, legally bound to not do anything. And they were adamant about us not playing because they were afraid we were going to, you know.
Steal the thunder from the,
Yeah.
the elevators.
And that was supposed to be this, which it really was supposed to have been the spirit band, and we didn't have any problem with that part of it because we knew damn well the real story. We could have come out first in our record management, and then when Easter Everywhere came out, it was still going to be just as good as it was, and we knew it was. We just had a lot more confidence in the elevators than they did. We knew where the elevators were. I mean, we knew them. We knew they didn't have to. You didn't have to pull any punches with the elevators to try to, you know, make everybody think they were something because they were something. And you heard them and you knew it. So they held their own.
Were you hearing the Easter Everywhere material live a lot for a long time before they recorded it?
No, just a few times. They play a few songs at gigs. But that was pretty much of a secretive thing. I mean, I'd go to the ranch and hear stuff, you know, but it was pretty exclusive. It was pretty, you know, they went to Stacy's ranch and worked out a lot of that stuff in Kerrville, and they stayed pretty away from everybody to do it.
So did you ever get to sit in on any of the recording sessions for the elevators?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
What happened when Power Plant finally did come out? Was there any promotion? Did you play shows then or promote?
Not very many. We played a few. That's when we played most of our Love Street shows and stuff, and people liked us. But it was, then it was just kind of, it already was kind of after the fall. You know, by the time it all happened, it's like, it was so obvious that that the reviews on it were just basically, you know, this is just another International Out Bar that wishes they were the elevators, and, you know, it's not very good, not very creative. And so it basically, that slap in the face pretty much did in the Golden Dawn. Tommy was just going, man, I don't know what we can do. These assholes are just not going to get it, you know. He got married about that time, and Rita got pregnant, and the demise of the band, you know, kind of fell after that. And I was tired of it. I was ready to go and do other things too. I wanted to go to California, you know. I wasn't sure what next I wanted to do musically, because this had really been, to me at the time, seemed to be pretty much of a serious failure. Put a lot of time into it and nothing happened. And, you know, artistically, I knew that it was good. I knew that the stuff I was doing was as good or better than even it was. And I always judged my stuff by the last song I wrote, you know. And so it's hard to explain, you know. I mean, Nancy could explain it better, but she won't. But it's the fact that with me, it's like I really am the kind of person, and I don't know how many artistic types are like this, but on the one hand, it's like I'm always worried that nobody likes my stuff, that it's not as good as it should be, or it's not as good as, you know, because I set my sights so high. My writing had to be as good as Dylan's, or it wasn't worth writing, or John Lennon. Well, you know, I mean, that's pretty high goals to do. My novel has to be as good as Tolstoy's, and, you know, it's just always that kind of a thing, that you want it to be as good as it can possibly be, and it never lives up to those expectations. But then, strangely enough, on the other side, it almost doesn't matter to me what anybody else thinks of it. It's like I know where it's at, and so it gives me a good feeling that I'm able to do it, even if nobody's clapping. You know, does the artist get appreciation in the woods even if nobody's clapping, or, you know? Yes, they do. Because it, you know, that part of it, I've never really lacked confidence in. You know, I've always just figured if they don't like it, it's because they're fucked up. And Nancy's bringing you my Johnny Cash show thing.
I wanted to ask what you did after the Golden Dawn.
Yeah, I did go to, when I got out of the Golden Dawn, I did kind of get away from all that and started playing songwriter stuff and hanging around with the Waco bad boys and the sit around the campfire playing outlaw songs groups, but real campfires with real outlaws and stuff up from Mexico. And I went through a whole sort of a wild period like that and ended up doing Johnny Winchester stuff and learning a bunch of his songs and liking his songs. And we went up to Nashville, decided that's what I had to do, and ended up meeting this guy, Vince Matthews, who had written a lot of Johnny Cash's hit songs and made money, lived out in the little town with me where my car had broken down and I'd bought the house while I was waiting for it to get fixed. And he and I became friends, and the guy that had been singing, he had written this thing here called the Kingston Springs Suite, and it was a thing that Johnny Cash put the money into and was producing a documentary, a film documentary about the little town that we were in, Kingston Springs, Tennessee, about 30 miles outside of Nashville, where Vince lived and where I bought a house. Like I said, when I was there waiting for my car to get fixed, I'd found this little house in Holland and just decided to stay. And so he got me, the lead singer for this thing had gone to Canada or something, so they needed a lead singer for this thing, so I learned all the songs and did the show with him, which was a dilemma of how you can actually be anywhere near talented, be in the kind of situation that I was in, and still not become well-known or famous. So I've managed to find that out. But this was like catered. It was a private showing at the House of Cash studio, which is where he did his television specials. The year that Johnny Cash was bigger than life, he'd made $100 million that year. It's like Johnny Cash was Nashville. He had that special on TV from his house there, the Henderson House of Cash, which is a studio house. We did this thing out there. June catered it. It was white cloth dinner. We were the band in the studio, and it was only the elite record people and producers and promoters of Nashville were invited. No public. And there were probably 200 people there. And he was selling this production to the music business. Johnny Cash had produced it, put the money into it. Now he was showing who wants to bid on this for this to go on. The idea was going to go on the road. It'd be a road show with a big production crew and buses and all that, like they used to do, and do this documentary this guy had written. It was really well done. It was a documentary about the little town, the changing of the times. One of the songs is 100 new houses being built. The little you see the picture everywhere you go. It's America. It's like it was, and that was the whole essence of Johnny Cash, was just this rural American roots and what's happening to it. And this town was just a perfect archetypical little cross section of that whole kind of de-evolution of rural America, being broken up into these quaint little towns are broken up into the subdivisions, and then pretty soon there's a Walmart, and all of a sudden there's nothing. The mom and pop businesses are out of town. Well, this was the very beginnings of that, and he did a documentary on the colored blacksmith that now no longer had any horses to shoe, and the railroad man, because the railroad used to bring the people out from Nashville to Kingston Springs, the rich people, then they would go and stay in the hotel and go to the Springs and all that. And they'd go up the hill in the trolley, and it was all the interrelation of these people's lives that now were just displaced, And it ended up with Vince and I floating down the Harpeth River smoking a joint, and the name was floating and toking and poking downstream. It was just like, oh well, here we are. You still got the river,
So after this presentation, nobody bought it.
They were bidding on it like crazy. They loved it. We got a standing ovation. I got offers that night, as singers, saying, God, where are you? We've been waiting for somebody. They loved my singing. My country singing was great back then. And we had a great band. All top Nashville guys were playing on this, so it just sounded wonderful. And you're not going to believe this. The next day after this presentation, the oil embargo was announced in 1972. Gas prices went from 50 cents to like $3 a gallon overnight. All the shows in Nashville were canceled, grounded. There was no money for gas for the big bus tours. Records were stopped being made. The only people that could get vinyl, which is a petroleum-based product, were people like Johnny Cash, because it was a sure thing. I mean, you know, they could still, but no speculative acts. No money was being spent on any kind of new. This thing had all been set up to be financed, and people were bidding on. That was what this whole thing was, to sell this show. And of course, right after that, the next day, it was like, well, back burner. In the music business, back burner means, just like the Golden Dawn album, back burner means never. It's always the front burner right then, or it's not going to happen. It's very timely. Everything you do. That's why we got to get that book published.
I assume it was before you went to Nashville that Headstone existed?
Mm-hmm.
What was that about? What'd you do?
Really, some real crazy cocaine rock and roll. That was the one cocaine period of my life. Mm-hmm. And it was right at the height of the Rolling Stones' real tour, a couple of their tours where, you know, it was all the, you know, I can't remember some of the Street Fighting Man and all that wild stuff, you know. And we had a band called Headstone, and I'd written a bunch of songs for it, you know, that were real heavy, kind of Rolling Stones-ish, you know, get the fuck out of the way.
Swaggering songs.
Yeah, you know. Okay, we tried to be nice and you didn't listen to us. Now watch out, because we're going to kick your ass, you know, and bust the doors down, you know. Keep your daughters hidden. And, you know, and we played nothing. We played a few gigs. Okay. The one characteristic about that band that's noteworthy, another thing that's really hard to believe, but it actually really did happen, and that is that we practiced. So we said when we started the band that to get good enough to compete, because again, remember, my songs were going to be like Dylan's, and the band was going to be like the Rolling Stones. It was going to be as good as the Rolling Stones, or we weren't going to do anything. So we practiced it 1 year. We picked a day, and we started, and we practiced every day for 1 year. Every day, 365 days in a row. Every day. We lived in a big house over in Clarksville, and practiced every day for a year. And then got a couple of frat gigs and broke up. You know, nobody liked us.
Was Michael Erickson in this band?
He came and went in it. He sat in with us a few times. He was never really a full-fledged band member, but yeah, he played in it some. He played guitar. He's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Who else was in the band?
Brett Edwards, who was Jay Edwards' brother, who Jay and Judy Edwards, Judy and Jay were married, and Jay and Judy and I were very, very good friends, still are through the years. Jay's son, Dude, played in After the Fall band, the Bandit Kings, guitar up to like the last couple of gigs we played. He was supposed to have played in Houston for that gig, but something happened he didn't do. He kind of left the band. But where were we? Yeah, I lost thinking about Jay and Judy, man. I forgot about everything else.
Oh, well, I got one.
We're in the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were in the band. Who else? A bass player and drummer Danny Thomas was in it from the old Elevators band.
Right.
Yeah, Danny Thomas was drummers. Yeah. And he was a great drummer. I'm sure he still is if he's doing it, but he was really good. He and his wife lived right next door to us where we practiced. And so he was in it, and Danny Galindo played bass for a while. God, there were a lot of famous people in it.
Yeah.
Danny Galindo was a killer bass player. I mean, God, he really was. He played bass. Danny Galindo played bass. Danny Thomas played drums. I played guitar. I just started playing guitar before, and the Golden Dawn I just sang. Had Terry Brown playing guitar for a while. Brett Edwards played guitar. Both Brett and Jay Edwards played guitar, both in the band for a while. Terry Brown played in the band. He's now our steel guitar player.
Oh, really?
So he and I go way
back
back
then.
too, yeah. So that was that.
So you guys, was this band active as you were in other ways in helping to try to free Roky at the time and help Roky?
Well, what happened there was during Headstone was when I founded Pyramid Publishing Company. And the whole company was founded to publish a book of Roky's writings from Rusk State Mental Institution. He was housed in the maximum security division there at Rusk. And I decided that through his lawyer, working with his lawyers, I had hired some lawyers for him. Mike had hired some lawyers, and I'd hired some lawyers too. And the consensus is that we managed to get the shock treatment stopped, because that was the one thing that we were all adamantly opposed to. That can't be the way. You're taking away the breadcrumbs. They're never going to find their way back. You got to put stones on the trail to get back from these things. They got to find their way back. Their theory was that wasn't it right, but we prevailed and got. I don't know how many shock treatments Roky ever really had, because I never really saw those records, but we stopped them fairly early on. We managed to achieve that legally, and then it became evident that Roky could be released, but he could not be released unless he had some kind of a viable life going on the outside. Which of course was the only way you would look at something like that if you were, that was totally reasonable. You take a guy you put him right back in the same situation. You take a heroin addict. Roky wasn't a heroin addict, but as an analogy, if you took a heroin addict and get him off and put him right back in the heroin scene, well, what's going to happen? Nobody's that strong. So the idea was that Roky had to have something going for him, some kind of a career, something going on, and he'd been out of the there wasn't anything really going on. There were a lot of Roky benefits. Everybody played. He never got any of the money. It was very well, it's just anybody that wanted to do a benefit would do one, and I just completely got away from all that and wouldn't talk to people about it and wouldn't go to play the things, and I played them for a while and then stopped. It was nothing good was happening. So I decided to publish this book. I'd gone to visit Roky during all these times, and he had said that he had these writings that he wanted to publish a book called Openers. And so I said, well, okay, I'll do it, because I had some money and wanted to do something with it, and decided that was the thing I wanted to do with the money that I had to spend. And I had about $10,000. And, had I been a good businessman, I would have bought the printing equipment and done it myself and still had the press and been able to have a business out of it. But no, not me. Let's just find whoever's going to do it, and I'll get the stuff together. We'll pay somebody to do it, and it'll be there. And of course, it's going to sell so good that all this will be paid back, and I won't even have to worry about the $10,000. That'll just be chicken feed compared to, I think I printed 10,000 books, and I thought $10 a book, $100,000, I'd put up $10,000, I'd get my money back, Roky would have a nice little thing set up, I'd be making some profit off of it. Oh, it all sounded great. But I forgot that the rest of the world wasn't reading the same script that I was on. And so I went so far as, so I smuggled the stuff I'd go see Roky, and he'd write me little things and wad them up, and I'd put them in my boot, pages, and I'd get them home, and I hired a secretary to transpose all this stuff and unwad the stuff and type it all down. And we finally got the manuscript put together, and the editing on it wasn't really very good, because I was really afraid to edit it too much, because the way Roky was then, and I suppose now still, is he has very unique ways of saying things that I would try to change, and then we'd kind of argue about them, and then I'd realize that he really did, even though grammatically they could be construed to be incorrect, if you really looked closer, what he was trying to say really was what he was trying to say. and if you got past that first thing of it, it was like Zen poetry or something, like Ginsberg or something. It was like once you got loose from all the stuff it was supposed to be and what was wrong with it, then you could start getting what it was. And so when I realized that, I just said, here it is. This is what he wrote. This is what's being published. I'm not touching it. And that was Openers 1, the little white hardback book. You ever seen one of those?
No, I've just seen the Openers 2.
Yeah, Monahan did that one. But ours is a little white hardback. It was Openers 1. And it was all the stuff, and I know one of your questions gets to this, where it was, you're talking about, were the things in Openers kind of to hoodwink the people, the non-drug things that he said, just to hoodwink
fool the shrinks.
To fool the shrinks.
Yeah.
And they're definitely, that was never a conscious thing that was discussed between Roky and I. That was never an issue. Whether it actually was done on that level, whether either one of us were really aware of it, or whether it had that effect, it may have, probably did. It wouldn't have bothered me if it had. We would have done it had we thought it would have worked. But I don't really think that was it as much as it was just a matter that there's a lot of ways to tell the story. You know, there are he used a lot of Christianity, a lot of Christian terminology in that book. And I just think that was the media that he was communicating through, in that type of a genre right then, and he was telling the story in that way for whatever reasons, whether it was because of where he was at and he realized it was like the troubadours realizing that they couldn't say something, so they had to use a cloaking device to get their message out. How much of that Openers was done, you know, I don't know, but it certainly could have been that. But there's just a lot of ways to say the things that he was trying to say, and that was the way he was doing it at that time. So
what happened to these 10,000 copies?
I got screwed out of them too. You know, I really did. I just kind of, Mike Erickson had put X amount of money up. I'd put the vast majority of the money up for the books. But I didn't have a place to keep them. And I kept them out at Mike's house. He had a warehouse he's built out on the lake, and I didn't really get screwed out of them, but I put them all out there, and then Mike all of a sudden sort of decided that they were his because he had put up a lot of money for Roky too, although I had paid for this. That got a little bit, there was a lot of cocaine involved, and that can cause people's personalities to get real materialistic, and I was probably equally to blame. You know, but we kind of came to odds over that for a fairly brief period. Certainly nothing that lasted. There's no lasting rift between me and Mike over that or anything else, you know. We're friends. But there was a little bit of that. So I kind of lost contact with them, and I think part of them burned down in a big fire that was out at his house or something. And huh?
We still have a book.
We have two. But that was kind of where that was at. We sold a few. We did sell a few. We probably sold 1,000 books at cheaper prices to bookstores and stuff. And I took a couple of cases out to California to the Horizons Unlimited bookstore here. And then there was I can't remember what that bookstore was out there. It wasn't Horizons Unlimited, but it was something like that. That was kind of the new age bookstore. And they sold a few, and then the one down in Houston we sold a few at, and we sold a few books here or there. So there's books around, you know, somewhere, but I'm not sure where.
Well, backtrack. I just wanted to cover one other question about the power plant album. Somebody asked, just want to know, was there anything that was in the can that didn't make it on the album?
No.
No, that was the totality of it.
That was it. What we put on that album was the only recordings we ever did. Other than I think we made some practice tapes at home or something, and I don't have any idea what happened to them.
Did any of the headstone material get recorded? Live tapes or anything?
I think I actually have some headstone tapes somewhere, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked in so long. They're reel-to-reel tapes, and my 1/4-inch tape. I think I probably do have some headstone stuff. I should go look for it sometime. Because I wonder if how you could get that on any other kind of form. I don't have a player. I don't know anybody that has a player.
You take that to probably any studio, and also actually Kilo has a connection to a studio. He could probably get it transferred over.
I might do that one of these days when I get a day off. I'll go through my boxes of tapes and look and see if we don't have some of that headstone stuff. Some of it, I bet you, was pretty good. I don't know.
With all those people involved, it seems like it would have to.
Yeah, we were pretty intense. We always came to play.
Did any of the Golden Dawn gigs get recorded?
Mm-mm.
No live
To my
shows?
knowledge, no. That's another thing that's hard for people now to realize because the equipment's so neat now. I mean, everybody's got a little video camcorder that they can. Then nobody had shit like that.
The price was too high.
Price was too high. You had to be almost a professional to have anything that was any good at all.
Mm-hmm.
So our stuff never did get, there wasn't anything, I don't think.
Well, how about we get to the slate of elevator questions
Okay,
on here.
go for it.
Okay. Let's see here. If somebody want to know about Powell St. John and Clementine Hall, what you could tell us about them, like before the elevators and how they influenced the whole Roky, Tommy, Stacy, Trinity thing.
I saw that in this question was written the Holy Trinity. And if that was the case, then Powell St. John was John the Baptist and Clementine was Mother Mary. It's like she was the mother of the band. Clementine Hall was Tommy's wife, was definitely the mother of all these crazy, confused teenage and early 20s musicians that were just beautiful and everything, but just had no fucking clue about life because they were just so young. None of us did. We really were kids, and she was quite a bit older. She was, which I mean, she wasn't an old lady, but she was, back then when you're 20, somebody 25 or 26 is old, pretty well. She was about 30. Mm-hmm. Tommy was a lot older than us, 8 or 10 years older than us, and so he and Clementine in particular was a very wise together woman, and she was in this for the heart too. I mean, she realized all pretty much of the dangers and how sort of hopeless it was, and yet had to be done. The mission, and she really saw it as a mission, and her place in it, and she was contributed a lot of stability. People get too stoned, she'd take care of you, She could tell you the things you needed to hear about your sanity, and was a very wise woman. I have a great deal of love for Clementine then and now. She was never anything but just kind and gracious to me. When I went to California and stayed with her, she put me up while I was trying to get some stuff done out there, and she was just the greatest hostess. And at the time, I remember she was sewing a shirt for Jim Morrison for money. She did several. She had to survive. Tommy sure as hell wasn't sending her any money. And she was really convinced the band needed to be in California, not Houston. She really saw the demise of the whole police, the whole anti-negative thing that was on the elevators in Texas was very real. The fans loved them, but it was just, they were doomed. The authorities were not going to allow it with us or them. It was never, we just didn't know. We were kids. We didn't realize there was bigger fish. There was a bigger scenario at hand, and they were not going to allow that kind of revolt. It just wasn't going to happen. We all thought because we were so serious and we were so right and all that we would just win the populace and they would just declare us all okay. Mm-hmm. And Clementine realized that California was the place where that was happening. And yes, out there maybe so, but not Austin, Texas. It just was. Willie and Waylon hadn't made their hits here yet. Darryl Royal hadn't decided that long-haired country music was really okay after all, even if they did smoke pot. So before that happened, it was still dangerous, like you were saying before. They should have stayed out there probably. But I mean, should have, who knows, They were what they were. But they did live in danger, and so did we. But when you were out there, it was different. Clementine just took care of you. It was so wonderful, and it was just great, and I had a wonderful trip out there. Never had to worry about where to stay. And Pal St. John played in the Chelsea. My band, the Chelsea, was a harp player in the Chelsea. He was good friends with John Andrews and Bob Arthur, who were the bass player and lead guitar player in the Chelsea. I met him then with Benny Rowe, my now still guitar player, harp player. I didn't even know he wrote songs, He just came and played harp with us, and it was just great. And then I started finding out about some of the stuff and some of the songs he'd written, and that he had collaborated with the Elevators and written Slide Machine and Monkey Island, and so yeah, he gave them an authenticity that they would have never had without him, because he was of that beatnik, generation of motorcycles and wine at night, and the whole pizza delivery, whatever it was, and just had that authenticity. And his writings were always like that, very artistic, very insightful, not at all lofty like Tommy's, but very, very, very the same thing from a different approach that you really is so rare, but when you see it, you know it, and he had it. He was really a great songwriter. So it kind of balanced that of theirs. It kind of gave Tommy the opportunity. It's like having a good rhythm section so you can really play the right lead. It's like Pal gave them that sort of firmness on their lyrics and their songs, that stamp of a real songwriter, And he was good. He has a song called Right Track Now that I still play that I don't think's ever been recorded. It's one of my favorite songs.
Now?
Yeah. Well, maybe Roky did do that one time.
I think, that one's recorded.
Yeah.
So I'm on the right track now.
Uh-huh.
Was that on Bull of the Woods? Or I can't.
I don't know.
Edit that out.
But wherever it was, no, I don't. It seems like it has been, but
I know
much hadn't been made of it. But it was a great song, and I've played it for just years and years and years. And we played it the other night, in fact. But the connection of John, Pal St. John was he was a serious contributor to their thing through his songwriting. I never played with him to my knowledge, but.
Well,
and then Tommy met Gay Jones and forsook Clementine for her. And it all went downhill from there.
Well, let's see here. Someone want to know if you could tell what would Stacy play when he was just noodling around on the guitar.
And I have something on that if I could ever remember what it was. Oh yeah, and I don't know really, because he played a few country songs. He'd play George Jones sometimes, but I never heard Stacy really noodle around much around me. We weren't in that scene together. We talked a lot and listened to each other a lot, and smoked a joint or drank beer together, and we kind of got away from our bands. My relationship with Stacy was that we got away from our bands together. We were the person that we got away from all that shit with, and we'd go talk about our girlfriends, and I was in the process of breaking up with Dana, my first wife, and he was in the process of never being able to really breaking up with Laurie, his only true love, nobody to love Laurie, and so we were both kind of brokenhearted together during the whole thing, and we used to talk about what was going to happen, and he was just, that was our relationship more than sitting around playing guitar and stuff together. He played with the band, and I know he You know, he played it in other environs, but not really around me.
Okay. Let's see here. Guess I want to know about Tommy Hall, whether you thought he was a genius or a
Charlatan.
Charlatan. Excuse me.
Tommy Hall, I don't know whether he was either. People are always talking about Roky being a genius, and I don't know whether it's just that genius is something that I don't know whether I have a right definition for, but I think Einstein was probably a genius, you know, and I think there have been some geniuses. Whether Roky is a genius, if it is, I mean, he's one of the best singers I ever heard, if not the best. And what he could do with music, with his voice, Jerry Lafette's always telling me that that's how you can justify calling Roky a genius. It doesn't really wash with me. His songs, there's really nothing genius in them, in my opinion. I just don't see them. They're good. He hadn't written that many songs, and the stuff he wrote afterwards, all the two-headed dog stuff and all that stuff was, I never really liked it too much. You know, it never bordered on that kind of really great songwriting or anything. I love Roky for being Roky and for being a great singer and a really good friend and helping me with my music and being himself and being a beautiful, beautiful person and being one badass singer, you know, and a good guitar player too. Nice melodic stuff that you'd never dream Roky doing. That he, like Starry Eyes was one of his better songs that he's written in the after. Great song. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying everybody's just so quick to genius. He's such a music. It's just not true. You know. I guess Beethoven was a musical genius. You know, couldn't hear, but he could still. So that's, you know, Tommy Hall, was he a genius? He was smart. He was smart enough to pick up on the Gurdjieff and Ouspensky stuff and kind of give it his own thing. Smart enough to realize that there was a potential for combining that with rock and roll music and causing something. All that, whether that's genius, I don't know. It depends on what you would really define genius as. Whether genius defines some kind of a quantum leap in intelligence or approach to something would have to do with whether Tommy was a genius. He was definitely a radical thinker, a brilliant mind, one of the smartest people I ever knew, you know. He really had a way of relating things together from different sources and bringing them into focus. One definition of creativity is bringing different factors in together in new ways. So he's very creative, very intelligent. Whether he actually broke the bounds of one old way with a new way, I don't know, can't say. But he wasn't really a charlatan in that I know his heart was in it, and he was always himself. He was always helpful to me. Wasn't, you know, he was kind of on an ego trip there for a while, as anybody in his position would have been. But he was always, I always had access to Tommy if I needed, you know, to talk to him or wanted to talk to him. So I certainly would not call him a charlatan. But I really would not. He got in a little over his head, but I wouldn't make him a charlatan in my book. Almost anybody that tries anything that outrageous is going to get in over his head. He got in over his head. He spread things out, and then stuff didn't catch up with him, and all of a sudden he was kind of out on a limb, and I think it was probably pretty confusing for him. But he was loyal to his ideas, as apparently he probably still is. And the ideas that he presented are valid. The stuff that he wrote in Easter Everywhere and the stuff is valid. If you study it, it works, it makes sense, it's well thought out. And so I think he was pretty much one of a kind.
So, what do you know about the feud between Roky and Tommy?
The feud between Roky and Tommy, I have two things to say about. One, they did have a great deal of respect for each other most of the time. Towards the end, I think it got pretty bad between them. I think that's why you're talking about a feud. There kind of was. And it has to do with the way that they both approached the whole band and the mission, quote, unquote, of what they were trying to accomplish together. And the way that I can most concisely express that is to relate a story of an evening that we spent together in Houston. And it pretty much epitomized the difference between Roky and Tommy. And we were in Houston out at Hog Park, the park that's for the Hog Foundation. And it was after an elevator gig at the University of Houston. And it was Roky and Tommy and I and somebody else. I don't know whether it was Fred Hyde maybe or somebody. I don't know who else was there. Maybe John Llewellyn or one of the maybe Little John or somebody. But there was one other person. It might have even, I don't think it was Lightfoot. But we were out there and we had taken acid. And no, we hadn't. We had taken mescaline. Somebody had some mescaline, so we were tripping on mescaline. And Tommy, as usual, was kind of, directing the session, as was the natural place that he held in our crowd, in our group. Even with Roky. And I was kind of Rocky's boyhood friend, but that Tommy had gained a lot of respect for, but I was there basically because upon Rocky's insistence. Roky wasn't going to let any of this happen without me being there, ever. I was always in because Roky brought me into these things and said, George, whatever happens when he comes up, he stays as his friend. Well, we were there, and Tommy had created this vision for us, and we were all there, and we watched. There's a bridge over Buffalo Bayou there at the Hog Foundation, and if you sit just right, the way the trees come over this bridge, and the place where we were sitting in this little clear grass area with banana trees and all kinds of tropical stuff that you'll find in Houston, of course, and then this place, and he would vision. He said, "Okay, every night at 1 o'clock, you will see a procession of Indian elephants and a whole procession of people coming through and doing these dances, and they come through here every night and perform. And if you just get into this, I'll show it to you, and you can see it for yourself." And so we did, and we did. We saw the elephants. It's like God's own drunk. It's like it was totally real. It was just like this whole thing, and dancing girls and the elephants and all this stuff, and they went through. And he said, "I don't know why they come through here, but on this level, you can see them. And I can bring you back tomorrow night, and you'll see them again. But it can't be till right now. It's got to be under these conditions. But if you get to these conditions, you can see this at any time." And it was all about his thing of time being constant and not changing. That time itself, all things existed in time at all times. And it was just simply a matter of your perception of it that moved you back and forth of it, so that if you achieved the right level and used the right mental agility, that you could actually experience different times in history and different geographical locations without doing anything except readjusting your reality. So we were talking about that, and we got into really the essence of the feud between Roky Tommy. Because Tommy's thing was to show people this, you have to tell them what it is. You have to tell them the way to do it. People don't know. You've got to teach them like children. And you've just got to tell them and insist that they learn and just be relentless. And Roky was, but Tommy, it's like, it's so clinical like that nobody's going to get it. It's all through love. The whole thing is that if you love enough, then everything comes to you naturally. All the places that are possible for people are achieved totally through love and emotion. So it became this whole thing of intellect or emotion. And unfortunately, of course, for me being the third party, it was obvious that, of course, it's intellect and emotion. I mean, it's like,
it's not either or.
It was, but because they were these people that represented this, it was like Republicans and Democrats. Well, we know it's not either. It's about, but that was because of the people that they were. That was the, Tommy was afraid to let the ball drop because people would just, free, let's all be emotional and let's love each other and blah, blah, blah. And so he was fighting, and the hippie movement was very much like that. So he was ruthlessly trying to fight that approach. And he had to, because otherwise it's just a bunch of blithering, stoned idiots. And Roky was going, yeah, but man, without that genuine of heartfelt love for people, the people themselves, then nothing that you say could ever possibly matter. So it was just this,
The dichotomy.
a dichotomy there that was immovable. The immovable force, the unstoppable force against the immovable object. And it was like, and it never obviously didn't get resolved because it was just like that. It was just frozen there, and that was it. And so from my perspective, it's like, oh, that was it. So I got to see the whole thing, like as one thing. So I understood it then, and then I could see where they were coming from in their music and in their relationships because I knew that then. And I knew that Tommy had set this thing up to show me that because he knew that someday I'd be talking to you guys.
Clearly.
But really and truly, I mean, it was just that, it was that intense, and that's the way it went, and there were other things like that, and, it was just wild, crazy shit, period, But it wasn't anything, the strange part about it is it wasn't anything superhuman. Everything about it was really pretty natural. Made pretty good sense, It wasn't anything real weird. So that's about Tommy.
Well, how about Stacy? Was he different than? I mean, what was his approach as opposed to Roky and Tommy on this? I guess that someone who asked this question said that he was less comfortable with intertwining the drugs and religion in the lyrics.
I think he was. I think for the same reasons, kind of that Tommy and Roky had that thing about which way. Stacy, being a good old Central Texas, cowboy, basically raised on a ranch, was real down to earth. Psychedelics were something that, he could get into because all good, it was something happening. It was, getting off and getting stoned, and he could kind of get into the intellectualism. He certainly wasn't stupid. He was a plenty smart guy, but it just wasn't his bent to be so intellectual about everything. I'm just a hopeless, I want to know everything. I trade books. I mean, it's like, my life is partly that. I can still go hunting and stuff, but still I'm really that way. Stacy really wasn't that way. Most people aren't really that way. He didn't really care why it all was happening. He really was in it for the music and trying to get things worked out with his girl and getting high and feeling good and going out and howling at the moon on the ranch. I mean, that was fine for Stacy. That was it. And that dimension, he was just so innocent. He was just totally innocent. That's the way he played. And he didn't really get involved. It always hurt his feelings to be kind of torn between Roky and Tommy. He usually always took Rocky's side, you know, because Roky did seem to be the one that was the much more lovable, you know. Tommy was stern, you know. He was like a school teacher that would slap your hand when you didn't do the right thing, you know. He was a very stern teacher. He didn't accept any bullshit, no small talk ever at all. I mean, you didn't sit around and just chat with Tommy ever. It was strictly business all the time, and everything you said, he'd point out how it related to everything that you'd said before, what was going to happen next. If it came from the left, it was from the future. If it came from the right, it was from the past. So now what? You know, and it was work being around Tommy. But Roky was different. I mean, it ended up being work being around Roky too, just because it got so wild. But most of the time with Roky earlier, before he got so kind of bent out of shape, was just rolling in the aisles, giggling and laughing, and you know, having a great time. And he could have been Charlie Chaplin. I mean, he was absolutely a hilarious person. His antics were. I talked to you the other night about that Carlos Castaneda stuff. It was like he must have been, Roky was the kind of teacher like Don Juan must have been. You know, Don Juan Mateus. Like he was always pulling tricks on you, you know. The first time we turned on the grass, the first time I ever smoked grass was with Roky. And it was in his little apartment over on 18th Street that's, of course, now been torn down. There's a state building there. And I had a little apartment up on the hill, and he had a little apartment down. And we spent a lot of time back and forth. And the day that Tommy had made him swear to God he wasn't going to turn any of his friends on to pot because of the legal ramifications in the band, and this is a big secret thing, and nobody can know about this, and this is, you know, this is the direction we're going now, but people find out later. Of course, the first thing Roky did was get me down there, you know, got some pot and got me stoned. And I got real stoned, of course. And Nancy will tell you, it doesn't take much grass to get me really stoned. Yeah, I'm a cheap date. But we smoked a little bit of grass, and while I wasn't looking, Roky went in the bathroom and turned everything in the bathroom upside down. You know, but didn't say anything about it. And then, you know, I was kind of getting a little sick. You know, the first time I smoked pot, I got kind of a little sick. Went into the bathroom to wash my face or something, and I opened the medicine cabinet, and everything's upside down, you know. And it's like just for some reason, just stuff like that all the time that he would do, and he'd never say anything about it, never crack a smile, you know. And then, you know, but he was always pulling tricks. He was very much of a trickster, Indian, you know, funny. So that's the different, you know, those were definitely different things. And Stacy was kind of in between that. He wasn't ever really comfortable with all that stuff about what they were doing in the mission and the changing the world and all that. Stacy didn't want to change the world. Stacy wanted to change his world. That was all he was interested in. That was plenty. So he gave the band his guitar expressed that, and probably of all the factors in the sound of the 13th floor elevators, Stacy's was certainly equally as dominant. And it was simply because he didn't want to be. You know, he was just so natural that he just didn't think about any of it that much. He just was. He kind of was the things that they were both talking about and trying to express. So he was a beautiful guy. I always called him the Dark Angel because he's always kind of brooding and always moping over Laurie, and nothing was ever quite right. And, you know.
Well, let's see here. Someone wanted to know about the myth that Janis Joplin might have joined the Elevators.
That's a story that I heard about, but I can't really give much information on because I never met Janis. I heard that Pal St. John wrote the song Right Track Now about Janis. But, you know, if he happens to hear this, he might say, no, I didn't. I don't know. I heard that. But it was, that was a period of the Elevators that I was really not too much into what they were doing. I was struggling with my own band on the other side of town, you know. And I don't know much about it. I heard that she sang with them at Threadgill's a couple of times, and I'm pretty sure that happened. Several people have said so. But whether she was really going to join the band, I think once, in fact, one of her interviews, she said that at one point she had thought about it or something, that they had asked her to join, and it just never really happened. I think it was one of those things, she might have sat in with him, and it all seemed like one of those things that was going to happen, but it just didn't, or, you know, whatever. But as far as I know, she never played a gig with him or anything like that.
I think it's kind of obvious that she had her vocal influences came from, you know, Roky. At least, you know, at least she was influenced from him.
She definitely was influenced. I think she was influenced by him because I think she heard the band and liked it and liked the way he sang. And yeah, I wouldn't say that was untrue. I would say she probably, you know, also had influences from Little Richard and some other people. The Screams and all that stuff. I mean, even Roky, you know, it's like Little Richard started that shit. Roky learned it from him, you know. I learned it from Roky. But Roky learned it from Little Richard. And I don't know who Janice learned it from, but it might have been Roky.
Well, let's see here. I think we've covered, pretty much covered. Well,
maybe it's a good time to start getting more up to date on what you've been doing.
Yeah, let's talk
Walk down
about your
memory
music
lane.
and your writing, you know, as of late. I mean, what directions did you took after the Golden Dawn? You know, you went to Nashville, and
I left Austin basically screaming in the night, you know, fed up with the cocaine scene, the headstone scene, just years and years of absolutely no recognition, losing everything. My marriage was a disaster. My first marriage had been a disaster. My second marriage was becoming a disaster. Everything was a disaster. I'd squandered, God only knows how much money, just on trying to make something happen that never did. So I really escaped to Tennessee, thinking this is it. I wrote a country song called No Deposit, No Return. And I thought, well, okay, that's great. Now that I've spent my whole life insisting that I was as good a songwriter as Dylan and John Lennon and Mick Jagger, well, this is probably the best country song that's ever been written. So I'll take it to Nashville. It'll be just a matter of weeks, and it'll all come true there. They'll realize that I can write anything, So I took this couple of songs, No Deposit, No Return, that the Greasy Wheels had been doing. Lissa and Mary and Cleve Hattersley and the Greasy Wheels. I don't know if you know who they are, but they're...
Just heard about it.
That one of my songs was one of their first songs that they did all the time around town. And I decided it was good enough that I should go to Nashville and become just get rid of all the rock and roll stuff, that I'd get up there in the hills of Tennessee and get laid back and it would all be calmed down, and that was where I really needed to be. So I got up there and, of course, met Vince, and the first thing I know, there's more cocaine in Nashville than Austin. It's like those country cats were really ripped, and had been for a long time. So it was just as crazy up there, and I went through all that. So I went through the country phase, then finally got away from that, went to Florida for a while, got out of music for a while, went back to Nashville, back to Austin, formed the Headstone. That was basically after coming back. No. After I came back from, what did I do after I came back from? Oh, I formed Benny and the Jags. After a few years of not doing anything and just working and everything, then I decided that whatever was going to happen, there was going to have to be some band and some music. And I played by myself for a while and played songwriter stuff around town, and just basically got tired of going into clubs that I had literally fought my way into and changed them into clubs from nothing, and going back and not being able to play there. You know, no matter what, I couldn't get a gig, and then became sort of taken in by some old friends of mine that had been successful in other forms, guys like Terry Booth, and who had music things at their houses, and he was one of the people that's always realized the authenticity of my music. And so he kind of championed me, and for the next years, that's the only gig I ever played was at his ranches or his house or some shindig that he was throwing, and would get me to come out and play for his friends. And it kept my music alive for literally years when there was nothing else happening. Then I did form Benny and the Jags. I got Benny out of retirement and decided what had happened. We had done the Walk of the Stars. It's a lot in a small amount of time. Having a degree from the University of Texas in advertising, during this time I'd gone back to school and gotten a degree. And worked for an advertising agency, Rector Duncan and Associates, and then got bored with the clients that we had and went, and he said, well, my boss said, well, we do association management. Why don't you, go find some kind of an association and we'll do the promotion. So I went down and started hanging around with Terry Booth, who owned a bunch of clubs on 6th Street. Had made some money in the radio business and had wisely invested in some clubs and started having a pretty good income, became pretty much of a wheeler dealer on 6th Street. And he and I started hanging out together and comparing notes, and decided instead of just an association, we needed to form the 6th Street Conservation Society to preserve the cultural integrity of 6th Street and let it evolve naturally into the music scene that it was going to become. This is before it really had. So we came up with a plan, and then we invented the Texas Walk of the Stars. That was the granites and sidewalks, and I solicited money from corporations and all this stuff to get it all done free. And we had Willie Nelson be the first star. When I got the Willie Nelson thing going, of course, that was too close to music for me to, it's like going into a bar if you're an alcoholic, It's like I shouldn't have done it, My life was going okay again, And I got into the Willie Nelson deal and put him in this Walk of the Stars as the first one. Well, I re-met Tim O'Connor, who I'd known from the way old days, who now owns, the Backyard, the Texas Music Hall. He's a big venue guy. Yeah, he's Willie's buddy from way back, and ended up making enough money through whatever he and Willie did to just be a rich guy, and had a lot of background in clubs, and a good guy too. And he heard my songs and a tape of my songs, and I played him a couple of things, and he said, well, here, I'll finance a studio. We'll go over to Arlen Studios over here at over on off of South Congress, where the Terrace Hotel used to be, where it used to be the Armadillo World. It wasn't the Armadillo World headquarters. It was the Texas Opry, and they ended up losing that name because of some infringement or something. But it was the Texas Opry House, Austin Opry House, I think it was, and they had a studio there. And he said, well, I'll pay for it. Just get you guys together and go do it. And the time is on me. I'll pay for the engineer, everything. Just go over there, see what you can come out with. So that's when I put together my next band, which was Benny and the Jags. I went and got Benny Rowe out of retirement, and a happy marriage and a good job. Ruined his life again. And got him to start playing lead guitar, and we formed Benny and the Jags, and we had some pretty good people in it, but fairly unknowns. Benny put that band together, and his wife sang back up, and we did a bunch of new songs that I'd written, some of the really good stuff. That there are some tapes from that, and we ended up doing the tape for him, and I had a girl named Tana Cochran that sang with us. It was just a killer singer. And we did a session of tapes. Well, we did the tapes and played a few gigs down on 6th Street. Played at Ravens a lot when Ravens was still open. played a few gigs at Joe's Generic Bar, and we were kind of getting going pretty good. But I was, again, it was another period of my life when I was selling cars, and I was just really it was too hard to push really hard, and we weren't making any money. And there came some conflicts in the band with Shelley and Benny, and I finally just quit the band. And so that was the end of that. And the tapes, nothing ever really happened to them. They never did get pressed into a CD or anything. And Arlen, the studio, lost the masters. So another one bit the dust. Oh, and then I met Nancy. And I was still selling cars when I met Nancy, and that was right at the kind of the end of that period where I was doing that tape, and that was falling apart, and I was back selling cars, going with another girl, and my life was just not going. I was really trapped. I was in one of those places where I'd really got myself into a corner, and I didn't know what the way out was, but it ended up being Nancy, and I sold her a car, and she bought the car because during the sales process of selling her the car, I used something about the analogy of the cave of Plato. And that had something to do with the car sale somehow. And she decided that if I could do that, if I could sell cars using the cave analogy of Plato, that I was somebody that she wanted to be around. So she managed to put up with me, and then we started dating, and then dated for a long time. And finally she agreed to marry me after I got the horses out here and lured her out here with horses.
The Golden Dawn hopes you enjoyed this recording. It's free to trade among the fans. All the band asks is that a $3 donation for each disc copied or downloaded be mailed to Golden Dawn, P.O. Box 405, Cedar Creek, Texas 78612, USA. Contact Golden Dawn at Kinney 777 at AOL.com. Visit the Golden Dawn webpage at www.neptunepinkfloyd.co.uk/GD/. Additionally, the legendary Golden Dawn is open to playing anywhere. Contact them at the addresses given or through their website.